Um, the Texas GOP launches an avalanche of bills to curtail voting. Texas Republicans are rolling out a slew of restrictive election bills, taking particular aim at early voting after Democrats enthusiastically embraced the practice last year. More than 2 dozen GOP-sponsored election bills are under consideration in the legislature as lawmakers seek to tighten the ID requirements and voter rolls, limit early voting, and up the penalties for error. The broad interest and a mandate from the governor to prioritize election legislation it makes changes to Texas's election law likely this year. Basically, they said they must pass laws to prevent election officials from jeopardizing the election process. This is what the idiot Republican Governor Greg Abbott said Monday, urging lawmakers to get election integrity bills to the desk so that they could sign off. State Senator Brian Hughes is a Republican who chairs the State Affairs Committee. He introduced a 27-page omnibus bill with several new restrictions and penalties, and he said the 2020 election increased interest in the in legislation, and the Texas lawmakers were already keen on that. This was already in process, but then the 2020 election was so in the national spotlight, and so many people have questions and so many people have concerns. He told NBC News last week, "I would say that has raised the profile of the issue. Former squatter Donald Trump's stolen election lie has convinced 3 of every 4 Republicans that there was widespread fraud in last year's election, which there wasn't." Um, the Texas Attorney General's Ken Paxton's office spent 22,000 hours looking for voter fraud, and they only uncovered just 16 cases of the false addresses on registration forms. According to the Houston Chronicle, nearly 17 million voters are registered in Texas. And while Texas already had some of the most restrictive laws in the books anyway, that isn't stopping state lawmakers from joining their GOP peers across the country to propose new restrictive bills. Republican legislators in Georgia, Arizona, Florida, and Wisconsin, many of whom joined the Trump to join with Trump to cast doubt in the system. They're legislating to restrict the vote, and they're arguing that new measures are needed to restore trust in the system. According to the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law, lawmakers have introduced at least 253 restrictive bills in 43 states. Shit. Democrats in Texas and across the country have countered with proposals to expand the voting access, but with GOP control in the majority of state legislators, and in key swing states, the restrictions are increasingly more potent. The system's already fair, but it's equally important that people know it's fair so they'll participate and they'll vote. Hughes was re-elected in November. He said he wasn't sure whether the presidential race had been stolen. It wasn't. Many of the provision, many, many of the provisions would directly address creative ways that Texans voted during this pandemic, like overnight early voting and drive-through voting, as well as mail-in voting, which Trump protested. If you can name an improvement, there's a bill that's been filed to try and eliminate it, said Cindy Weatherby, who works on voting rights issues with the League of Women Voters Texas. The group proposes restrictive voting laws and advocates for modernizing the state's election system. Early voting is a frequent target of the GOP bills, with proposed legislation targeting where and when voters cast their ballots before Election Day. Harris, who's the nation's third largest county, and home to Houston, appears to be a particular target. The county offered drive-through early voting and overnight early voting last year for its 4.7 million residents to make voting during the pandemic safer and more accessible. 2 Senate bills proposed barring tents and garages for early voting, potentially targeting the Harris County's drive-through early voting, which occurred in tents and garages. But the Republicans repeatedly sued over the drive-through voting last fall, but the courts refused to toss out the more than 127,000 ballots that were cast that way anyway. The several bills seek to limit early voting to certain hours or to standardize hours across the state, which would expand early voting in the smaller counties, while limiting it in the largest counties. All of them would cut early voting hours in urban Democratic areas. And State Representative Jared Patterson, a Republican from Denton County, introduced a bill to limit early voting to the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. His dumb comment tweet was, "Mama always said nothing good happens after midnight." He wrote in a tweet, and that includes polling places. Other proposed legislation targets the mail voting, which lawmakers say needs additional precautions to prevent fraud, and there wasn't any fraud. But Republicans have proposed a bill that would shrink the period when voters could return mail ballots, while another bill would ask voters to mail back the photocopies of their driver's license or other qualifying identification with their ballots. The Democratic voters in the state were more likely to cast mail ballots in the last election than the Republicans, which is what the Texas Tribune reported. Several bills also seek to ensure that non-citizens stay off the voter rolls and urge election officials to aggressively purge the rolls, and a slew of bills would add or increase penalties for fraud or mistakes that were made by voters or officials in running elections. Hughes' election Hughes' election bill, which he said expects will be the vehicle for any voting legislation coming out of the Senate, would impose civil fines on local officials who don't purge their voter rolls quickly enough. $100 for every voter the Secretary of State's official um, identifies as improperly being on the books. Several of the bills are being aimed at preventing things that happened elsewhere. State Senator Paul Betancourt, who's a Republican from Harris County, has sponsored a bill that would prohibit election officials from waiving the signature match requirements on mail ballots, which he said hasn't happened in Texas. He basically says that they saw it in Atlanta, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee. He said, pointing to many of the Democratic cities where large populations of black voters that Trump's allies basically accused of orchestrating a large voter fraud campaign to steal the election. Basically, he didn't see shit about stealing an election. A court ruling a court ruling waived Pennsylvania's signature match requirements in ballot verification last year, but the three other cities had verified voters who cast mail ballots. In Wisconsin, voters verified their identities by including copies of their photo IDs in the ballot application, and witnesses were required to sign affidavits. Um, um, and then Georgia and Michigan also verified that the signature matches on mail ballots. Pressed on that, Betancourt said it didn't matter, but just the fact that we saw it in Pennsylvania for sure enough is um um basically, I don't know what the hell he saw in Pennsylvania, but it wasn't voter fraud. He said, but we just don't want election officials going down that path here.